League Start is the most fun time in the Path of Exile patch cycle, and quickly progressing through the campaign is one of the most important aspects of ensuring you have a great time in the League. Hi, it's Larold, and I have some tips on how to shave a lot of minutes or hours off of your run through the Path of Exile campaign, but before I share them, be sure to like and subscribe if you like this video or find it helpful. I have done several rounds of League Start testing in preparation for the new League, and I found a Natural Divine Orb in Act 5, an Uncorrupted 6-Link in Act 10, and multiple Quicksilver Flasks in Act 1. I keep telling myself that if this is how well practice goes, then doing it for real is going to be so much better. That may not be true, but it is what I keep saying so I don't get too upset about wasting all my good luck when it doesn't count. Alright, let's just start right with step 1, making sure you have the proper setup. For me, I think the first part of this is finding a good starter build guide. How do you know what's a good build guide? At the bare minimum, it should have information on how to progress the character throughout the campaign. Some builds are sectioned off by act, some are just by large level blocks. Both of these are fine, but be sure that the build has some level of instruction on how you're going to choose your passive points and your skills from the time you leave Lionized Watch until you've killed Act 10 Kitava. This also means you need to use an update Path of Building. You should use Path of Building. I've seen some comments from people, both on this channel and just along the years elsewhere, who say they don't use Path of Building and say they don't even want to learn. This to me is like bragging about brushing your teeth but never using toothpaste. I guess it's not illegal, but you should just do it for your own sake. You also want to set up item filters. Go to the website filterblade.xyz or just Google Filterblade or PoE Loot Filter. Streamers and speed levelers like Tai Killer will use specific filters for different builds. For example, if you're playing a ranger, you could highlight bows and 3 or 4 green linked items. This is really good if you're willing to go to that length. Personally, I just use Filterblade's default semi-strict filter while leveling most builds. The default stuff is really good. The point here is that whatever filter you're comfortable using is fine, but you do want to make sure you have one and make sure it is updated. You also want to update any sort of trade tools or add-ons you're using. I use both Awaken PoE Trade and PoE Overlay. I recommend them both. You can find them on Google. Both are really useful. They can work alone. I like features of each of them, so I like to use them together. You also want to set up your bookmark tab in Chrome or Firefox or, I don't know, Internet Explorer, whatever your web browser of choice is. Make a PoE tab and put the following links into it, and I'll put these all in the description so that you can do that. PoE Trade Site, PoEWiki.net, craftofexile.com, PoE.re, that's the PoE regex editor, which is useful for sorting through vendors for useful items in Act 1 and 2, PoEplanner.com, that's useful for planning Atlas strategies, filterblade.xyz, and PoElab.com. These are all useful tools while leveling and doing your initial progression into the end game. Once you've chosen your build, try to do some practice runs to get familiar with it. At the bare minimum, run through Act 1 and kill Merveil. If you don't have all that much experience playing through the PoE campaign and you want to get better at doing it during a League Start, doing Act 3 runs is a really good approach for getting faster at the hardest and slowest parts of the game. Basically, you just run through the first 3 acts, complete the first lab, and kill Dominus. I've spent a lot of time practicing this specifically, and it has really helped me get a lot faster at leveling. I used to need an entire weekend to finish the campaign when I was new and clueless, but now I can be in red tier maps and fighting in-game bosses on day 1, and I really do owe basically all of it to just practicing the campaign. Okay, you have your build chosen, your Path of Building is open in your second monitor, you've done a practice run or 2, you're logged into the new league, and you're ready to blast. What do you do now? Skip basically everything. One of the most important aspects of leveling through Path of Exile, completing the campaign quickly, is to not engage with the majority of league mechanics. This is in direct conflict with how GGG tutorializes the game, how they make the game appear that it is supposed to be played. It's a bit counterintuitive, but the best way to play the campaign is to effectively ignore every league mechanic you encounter and just try to move through as quickly as you can. Basically, pretend you're in Standard League until you reach maps. This applies to the new league mechanic in most cases too. Every league there are Reddit posts from someone on day 1 or 2 saying they got a tabula rasa in the mud flats from the current league mechanic, and that's really cool, good for them, but 99% of the time, you are better off skipping the league mechanic until you reach maps. The only exception is when a league mechanic increases your move speed and is like basically deterministic or very close to it, such as with the Wildwood Warden of the Magi Ascendancy that grants you 30% increased move speed if your boots have no gems in the sockets. That was worth a couple of minutes of screwing around in the Wildwood to find that bonus and have it for the whole campaign. So sight unseen, I feel confident saying that any league is worth skipping unless it is guaranteed to make you run faster. Getting through the campaign so that you can do the league mechanic in the maps is what's most important. Now let's talk about gear. Gear during the campaign is not that big of a deal. I cleared all of Act 6 and 7 in my most recent Toxic Rain Pathfinder leveling practice run with -20 cold resistance, and I was fine. I killed both Act 5 and Act 10 Kitava using a blue bow with crafted attack speed and nothing else on it, and again, it was fine. Upgrading your gear makes the game easier, but that doesn't mean it's required to actually finish it, or even to finish it quickly. You want sockets that fit your skills, you want a mixture of life and resistances, and enough stats to equip all of your gear. You also want movement speed on your boots. If you're using an attack skill, you probably want a weapon with relatively high damage. Done. That's all you need to know to solve gearing in Path of Exile's campaign. There's a common piece of advice that's said a lot by streamers and YouTubers. You want about 200 to 250 life per act. I think that's true. I pretty much agree 100%. There's another common piece of advice that says you want to keep your resistances around 75% from Act 6 onward, and I think that's really only true if you find yourself dying repeatedly, or obviously if you're in hardcore. The point of fixing your defenses is just to save time from dying, but dying is not usually a huge time loss during the campaign, as long as it's not happening over and over and over again. If you need to go to your hideout and use the crafting bench on any of your pieces of gear that have empty suffixes to add primary stats or resistances, or I guess empty prefixes to add a bit of life, you can do that. If you find yourself dying, you should. But if you're not dying, don't bother, just keep zooming. And on that note, don't be afraid to die. Dying in softcore is not really a problem during the campaign. If you die during a boss fight, the boss's health doesn't reset. This is not Elden Ring. This is not Path of Exile 2. You can just throw a wall of your character's corpses at a boss's face until it dies. Now, doing that isn't efficient, but the point here is that going fast and dying a few times along the way is fine in softcore. It's actually better than never ever ever dying but moving slowly the entire time. Most of the Path of Exile campaign is just spent walking through Rayclast. I can't really emphasize this enough. This game is very literal. It's Path of Exile. What do you do when you're on a path? You walk. During the campaign, you want to do everything you possibly can to maximize your movement speed. This means running at least 1 Quicksilver Flask, up to 3 is ideal, especially for the first 5 acts. Once I reach Act 6, I start using more utility flasks, and usually scale down to just 1 Quicksilver. You can get 2 Quicksilver Flasks from quests. The first is from Mercy Mission in Act 1, and the second is from the Great White Beast in Act 2. You also want to pick up and identify boots and look for movement speed. Hang on to any move speed boots that grant at least 25%. Now in the early acts, basically just use whatever you can get, but once you get later on into the game, 25% is kind of the minimum amount of movement speed you want to get from boots. You also want to use at least 1 movement skill. Many builds can fit in a primary movement skill and a secondary movement skill, and if that works for your build, you should do that. Just to give some examples, Leap Slam and Frost Blink, Shield Charge and Flame Dash, Withering Step, Flame Dash, and Blink Arrow. These are really good combinations. Now I want to talk about vendor recipes. The vendor recipe system, like everything in Path of Exile, is kind of complex and there's a lot to remember, but you can check out the page for it on the Path of Exile wiki if you, don't want to memorize a million things. But there are a couple of important crafts that you should hang on to. Resistance Rings. Getting Sapphire Rings before fighting Merveil is really helpful for mitigating her cold damage. Now you can just buy one from a vendor, potentially, or pick one up off the ground, but if that hasn't happened, you can create a Sapphire Ring just by vendoring an Iron Ring and a blue skill gem. It doesn't matter what skill gem it is, just blue, gem, and Iron Ring together makes a Sapphire Ring. This is true for the other resistances as well, so vendoring a green gem and an Iron Ring will give you a Topaz Ring, which is great for all the lightning damage in Act 2, and a red gem and an Iron Ring will make a Ruby Ring, which helps with all the fire damage in Act 3. Move speed boots are also another option for vendor recipe. If you get to Act 2 and you still haven't found move speed boots, you can do the Great White Beast quest and use that Quicksilver Flask to craft a pair at a vendor. I usually won't do this unless I have already also found a Quicksilver Flask off the ground, so if I'm at like 3 total between Mercy Mission, Great White Beast, and 1 as a drop, move speed boots drop more often than Quicksilver Flasks. Here is the vendor recipe, just in case you need to make a pair. Trade a pair of white boots, a Quicksilver Flask, and an Orb of Augmentation to a vendor, and you will get back a pair of magic boots with 10% move speed on them. Make sure you are within the correct level range for the zone that you are in. You can hit Tab to check the current zone level. By default, you will receive reduced XP if you are too low or too high for the current zone level. The default range is +3 or -3 levels. So if you're level 5 and you're in a level 6 area, you're fine. That range increases by 1 every 16 levels. So if you're level 6 in a level 10 area, you are too low. But if you're level 14 in a level 18 area, you're technically within the range, but arguably still too low. I usually try to be within 1 to 2 levels of the zone that I'm in. Generally speaking, if you're a little bit below the level of the zone that you're playing in, you're moving at a good pace. So how do you maintain that pace? For me, this was probably the single hardest thing to learn. Basically, you only want to kill enemies in the campaign for a few reasons. 1, they're in the way and you need to kill them to move through the zone or to not be killed by them. 2, your flasks are low and killing enemies will recharge them so you can keep that Quicksilver rolling. Or 3, if it's a magic pack and you are below the zone level. That's basically it. When you are killing enemies to refill your flask charges or to get XP, you specifically want to focus on large packs of enemies. There are a few zones where you can kill a lot of enemies really quickly and catch up on XP. These are sort of the exceptions to the rule of zooming through everything, and they're pretty good if you're a good bit below the zone level. Here are the zones. The docks in Act 3, the aqueduct in Act 4, Chamber of Innocence in Act 5, and Blood Aqueducts in Act 9. You usually want to skip rare enemies. They have a ton of health, and the XP that they grant isn't really worth the amount of time it takes to kill most of them. Now, if you kill a magic pack and a rare mob is in the middle of it near death, go ahead and finish that dude off. But if it's just a random full health rare mob or a rare mob that you've been killing for a while and it's at 60% health, don't fall for the sunk cost fallacy. Just go, keep moving. This advice is harder to follow than you might think, but it is really the big secret to leveling quickly. More than anything else, this is the trick. This is taken to the logical extreme on the Twilight Strand, which has a unique design to it. Killing Hillock takes you to level 2, but just to level 2. So there's no reason to kill anything else in the entire area. Other zones aren't that strict, but you should definitely still kill enough guys to at least keep your Quicksilver flasks flowing. And other than that, move first and shoot later. That is a good approach to dealing with the campaign. As long as you're not letting your character level fall way below the area level, you're doing really well. If you look at your character level and the zone level and find that you're above it, that's a good indicator that you should probably just try to skip on through a little bit faster. In Act 2, you gain access to auras. Depending on your class, you may be able to use things like Herald of Ice, Herald of Agony, or Skitterbots. Even if the auras that you have available aren't optimal for your endgame build, using something will help you kill enemies more quickly, and you should do that. Once you reach Act 3, if you're playing any of the 3 Dex-based classes or a Scion, you'll be able to buy the aura Haste from Clarissa as soon as you finish the quest Lost in Love. If you're playing one of the 3 other classes, you'll need to do Sios's quest in the library. Haste grants increased movement, attack, and cast speed, and despite not being the best endgame aura for a lot of builds, it's hands down the best aura for moving quickly during the campaign. The name is a dead giveaway. It makes you faster. The campaign is all about speed, and haste is speed. I try to use haste on basically every build that can satisfy that dexterity requirement, even if my plan is to drop it once I reach maps, or even in like the back half of the campaign. I at least want to use it for a little while just so that I can move a little faster. It's really useful during the period of time when you need to move fast more than you need to do anything else, and that's the only thing that matters. Finishing Clarissa's Lost in Love quest will also grant access to curses, and there is at least one curse that's useful for every possible build. Take whichever curse fits the type of damage that your build deals. During the campaign, I like to socket and self-cast curses on difficult enemies, primarily just bosses, but occasionally magic packs or maybe a rare that I do feel like I need to kill. This will significantly increase your damage in the toughest, slowest fights and really help boost your single target damage, which is usually the toughest part of doing damage in the campaign. Using curses against regular enemies, white enemies, is inconvenient and not worth the hassle most of the time, but be sure to use them against bosses. This will really shave a lot of time off of a full Act 1 to 10 run. Be sure to do all of the Trials of Ascendancy as you progress through the campaign so you don't have to spend any time backtracking to find them in previous acts. Now, if you're in an area with an unsolved Trial of Ascendancy, the game will tell you to solve the Trial of Ascendancy in that area in special light green text in the quest log in the right-hand side of the screen. But if you're not in the same area with the trial, you may not know where to look. Rather than just reading off a list of 12 locations and hoping you remember them, I'm going to direct you to the best possible resource, pathofexile.net. On the Trial of Ascendancy page, which I will link to in the description, they have listed the locations of every trial throughout the campaign. When should you go run the labyrinth? In my opinion, as soon as you've completed all the necessary trials to unlock a given lab, you're ready to run it. Open up poelab.com and go there ASAP. Get your Ascendancy points and then get back to zooming through the campaign. Alright, let's get on to the last bit of advice. Make sure you do every single one of the side quests that grants passive points throughout the campaign. There are a lot of quests throughout the campaign, many of which do not grant passive skills, and 22 quests that do. You need to complete all of the quests that grant passive skills and basically skip all of the ones that don't. So how do you know which ones to do? Practice is the best answer, but that takes time. I could just list all 22 quests off right now or throw them on the screen, but then you'd have to remember them, and that's a lot to keep in your head. So instead, let me again direct you to the best possible resource, poewiki.net. On the passive skill page toward the bottom, there is a section titled Passive Skill Points as Quest Rewards. This has a complete list of every quest sorted by the act in which they appear. Follow this list and complete all of the quests as they become available. Hand each quest in as soon as you complete it. You want to get that free passive point immediately so you can put it to use, killing dudes and zooming through the campaign. If you feel like you've missed anything or you just want to check, you can type /passives in-game and that will tell you what all passive points you've collected, and then you can compare that to the list, or if you finish the campaign, it'll tell you any that you've missed. I hope this helps you with doing the campaign and that you have a great start to the next league. Alright, I think that covers it. Be sure to like and subscribe, and thank you for watching. Bye.